I think choosing venues is something that couples should really research. Have a wedding all in one place, you'll be so much more grateful for it because you will be able to have that relaxed day. Because like yourself, I've done one where, the second venue is about 45 minutes. And you're going down a dual carriage. I'm like, what the?
And everyone's thinking the same.
Yeah,
All
and
the
even
guests are thinking,
like, oh,
why?
God, what's happening here? Do you know, I think a lot of today, I was thinking the couples could really save themselves with these issues, I suppose, that could crop up if they invested in a wedding planner. People so nervous about doing their speech, and just not enjoying their meal, not enjoying their drink, literally just sitting there rehearsing. That's really sad. And I think if you have the speeches at the start, especially for the nervous speakers, get it over and done with. They can then enjoy the rest of the day. And as someone who, in the UK, we don't get a lot of sun, when there is that golden hour, you want to be free of events happening at your wedding so you can take the couple away. And it tends to be, that golden hour always tends to fall around that meal time.
Hello and welcome to the I Do's and Do Nots podcast. If you're planning your dream wedding, then this is definitely the podcast for you. I'm Chris Wardle. I'm a luxury wedding videographer from Lifestyle Visuals, and each and every episode I'll be joined by a range of wedding experts to discuss tips, tricks, the do's, the don'ts, all when planning your special and unique day. So let's get into today's episode. So today I'm joined by Gina Fernandes Photography. Thanks very much for coming on the I Do's and Do Nots podcast. So on your bio, you class yourself as a photography and hybrid shooter, film and photo, and you're based in the Rutland area, Leicestershire.
That's right, yes, yeah.
A little caption from your website, you say, modern, fun, romantic documentary wedding photos for the loved up, sassy and snazzy human beings.
Absolutely. Think rom-com and pop it into a photo and film combo. That's what I'm aiming for.
Amazing. So a little bit quirky too.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm very much, I think even on my Instagram bio, I highlight it's weddings with personality or photos with personality. I'm very much catered towards people who have a little bit more personality and they come across like that on their day, and they don't feel awkward and they're not that camera shy.
Yeah.
They're the people I tend to attract and work with.
And showing that in their images too.
Absolutely, yeah.
So just give us a little bit overview of your background, how you came into photography, how long you've been shooting, that kind of thing.
It's quite a long-winded and weird story, I suppose. I've got this cliche in that, yes, my dad was into cameras and he did a bit of wedding photography when I was younger. We grew up with cameras in the house. We all each had a camera. I used to take photos, get the film developed at the end of the week. The weekend was about getting your photos. That was very much how I grew up. So cameras were always something that I loved. Taking photos was something I always loved. But it's never something I ever considered as a career. I wanted to be a TV presenter on Nickelodeon.
Doesn't surprise me. I can imagine that.
That's what I wanted to do, right? But I didn't end up doing anything I wanted to do, and I fell into teaching. So I was a primary school teacher, and then I thought, right, if I'm going to do this job, I'm going to go right to the top. I'm going to go right to headship. And it was, I got to deputy headship, and then I had children, and then I left. I thought I'd take a bit of a break, take some time out with the kids, because it was challenging trying to do teaching while having kids. I don't know how other parents did it, because teaching to me is very much like it's a lifetime thing. It's a lifestyle choice. So it just took up a lot of time. So I wanted to change. And to be honest, it's not something I ever really wanted to do. I sort of fell into it because friends were doing it. So I took a bit of a break. My husband ended up getting a job in Germany, so we relocated to Germany. This was just as we exchanged on a house in Rutland. So it was all going on, because I'm from London originally. So we bought in Rutland. He gets a job in Germany. We relocate. And then about a year later, I came back with the kids. And then I was looking after the kids by myself. My husband was coming home on the weekends only.
Okay.
And then I think I picked up a job for the NSPCC. And then I was going back into schools in Leicester and Peterborough and delivering assemblies. So I was still very much people orientated and standing up and doing lots of things, delivering workshops. And then I looked around me and I thought, God, nothing's changed in teaching at all. People still look tired, depressed,
Underpaid.
Absolutely right. And I actually got personal coaching. I knew someone who was a coach, and I then went through things with her and started to think about, actually, I want to run my own business. What's it going to be? And I looked at various things in the past, buying franchises or, doing something like that. But it wasn't until, I think, after my wedding and me being so particular with the photos, I really knew the photos that I wanted. And after getting that, having that experience, and then a friend, my sister's wedding photographer, was offering a course, just like how to use your camera. So I bought one.
Okay.
Went and did her course.
Yeah.
And then just sort of got into it. But it wasn't something unfamiliar. It was quite natural for me because I'd always liked taking photos. In a group of friends, I'd be the one with a camera. When I had my kids, I was constantly taking photos. So it was in there in me. I didn't feel like photo composition was something that I had to learn. What I had to learn was actually how to use this DSLR.
Yeah.
And once I got through that bit, the rest was just self-taught and
it's
every
definitely
day.
a natural skill.
Yes,
I think like you've either got it or you've not.
Yeah.
And your work is really good.
Oh,
I really
thanks.
like your work.
Thank you.
So yeah, definitely would recommend people check out your Instagram
thank
and
you.
check out your work. So before we go too much into the episode, let's start with our usual sort of quick fire question. I feel like we've already got to know you quite a lot already, but these
yeah, I like to talk, sorry.
no, that's no problem. It's a long form podcast. So yeah, we'll do our quick fire question round if that's all right.
Yeah.
So short answers, one word answers,
Okay.
however.
Here we go.
So hometown.
Oh my God, I was going to say where I actually came from. Uppingham. But in my head, I was going Ilford, which is where I grew up as a kid.
Yeah, well,
that's
you could
where I still probably consider home.
Way.
Yeah.
Are you married?
Yes.
Morning person or night owl?
Neither. Mid-afternoon.
And then sleep either side.
Yes, exactly that.
Coffee or tea?
Tea. Yeah, tea. Yeah.
Whilst drinking a coffee.
Drinking a coffee. I was just thinking that in my head. Yeah.
Hotel or camping?
Hotel. God, yeah.
What superpower would you choose?
Invisibility.
Nice.
Yeah.
Cats or dogs?
Dogs.
Dream holiday destination?
Oh, I'm a city break type of person. I think it has to be Japan, Tokyo, straight there. Yeah.
Favorite season?
Autumn.
Rap, pop, or rock music?
Oh God, none of them, but rap's the closest.
And I think I know this one. Introvert or extrovert?
I think I'm an extrovert. Yeah.
Me too.
There you go.
Coming on to the slightly more wedding focus round.
Sure.
So UK or abroad?
UK.
Large wedding or intimate wedding?
Oh, large.
Country house or barn weddings?
Country house.
Band or DJ?
I like a DJ. Controversial, I know. But yeah.
No, I agree personally.
Yeah.
Traditional or quirky?
Quirky.
Kids not allowed or allowed?
Kids not allowed.
It's always controversial.
Even though I had kids at my own wedding.
Yeah, well.
I'm not a kids at wedding person.
Summer or winter weddings?
Summer.
Or should have said autumn, possibly.
Oh, autumn, probably. Then, yeah, they would always win. Yeah.
Yeah. Indoor or outdoor ceremonies?
Outdoor.
Speeches or forget the speeches?
No, I think have the speeches. Yeah.
Wine or champagne?
Vodka, really, but champagne then.
That's the next one. Beer or spirits?
Spirits.
Last one then. Leaving early or last person standing?
Last person standing.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Do you like the party?
I do like the party.
Just quickly, what's your favourite part of the wedding day?
Favourite part of the wedding day is just after the ceremony. It has to be the confetti, and when everyone's at that point where they're all congratulating the couple and just talking to each other at that moment, that I think is fantastic. That's the bit I like. Cool. But I also am partial to the speeches. I do like them.
Well, that could be controversial.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
don't know.
absolutely, yeah.
I wouldn't say that's my personal favourite. I find
No.
it. It's worse with video,
Yeah, it does,
possibly.
yeah.
I find it quite stressful. But once it's done,
Yeah.
that relief just disappears, and
bet.
then I'm relaxed for the rest of the day. Not because I don't like listening to them. I just find it quite stressful thing to have to capture, and a lot can go wrong from the video point of view.
Of course, yeah.
Okay, cool. Thanks very much. That's,
No problem. That was fun.
let's go on to the first question then. So you've already told us a bit about your background. So what kind of inspired you to specialise in weddings particularly? And also maybe explain, you say you do a little bit of hybrid shooting, which
I do, yeah.
for people that don't know, that kind of means you shoot video and photo together.
That's right.
Sometimes there's more emphasis on one or the other. So just give us a little overview of how it works with yourself.
So I think the wedding aspect, why I like weddings is because it just plays out. There's very little you have to do to orchestrate things. So I also do like family photography and branding photography, and there is a little bit more input. But with weddings, you don't have to do anything. You just watch this day unfold. And I think I just like people, and I like people watching, and I think that's what feeds me, and that's what I get a buzz from. It's not so much the photos, it's being around a lot of people and seeing a lot of things go on, because I'm nosy. I'm very nosy, and I could be completely watching one aspect, but my ear is listening to something completely different, and that's how I tend to work on the day. And I think I just enjoy being there. I don't find it taxing. I don't find it like it's work. And I suppose I like the pace of it all. And I like being always doing something. And then I started to introduce film into that as well. And I literally I've programmed my camera so that it can flick between photo and film. And I'm able to capture a good 4 or 5 seconds worth of clips and then stitch that together. And I think what drew me to the film was more the music, because I love music as well. Yeah. And I think watching videographers' films and the music and it's just another dimension, isn't there, when it comes to film? And I just fell in love with that. But I'm not at the stage where you record actual speeches or actual audio. I can't, because I'm flicking between photo and film. So,
yeah, exactly. Yeah. I always say there's a time and a place for both. I mean, obviously, as you know, I'm the opposite. I'm a dedicated videographer. I don't touch video. Right. So on the weddings we have a dedicated photographer that is a third party. They may be recommended, or we may have never met on the day. And then obviously I dedicate my entire time, often maybe 2 of us, just focusing on the video. And it's more of the more highly polished stuff.
Yes.
But absolutely, there's a place for hybrid shooting. Also, it can be quite budget related too. Yeah. It helps people that maybe can't stretch to a dedicated videographer, but a hybrid package gives them a focus on really good photography, but gives that little extra element as well.
Absolutely. And I think whenever someone does inquire and they're interested in the video aspect, it's not something I push. It's not something I sell. They mention that they are thinking of film, and I always send, and you're on this list, a list of videographers, because I'm very much, these are people who will give you a good film with sound.
Yeah.
I don't do that. I literally do clips put together and snippets of your day, but photo takes a priority, and they're very clear about that. But some people, like you say, it's more of a budget thing, or it's a case of they don't like the sound of their voice. They don't want any audio captured, but they're happy to have just something. Yeah. And I'm like, well, I can do that. But it's not everyone. It's like an odd couple a year that I get that happens.
Yeah, I'm the same. Like you can tell if they're the right couple for you, or if they're looking for something slightly different to what you offer or what you prefer to offer. Yeah. So there's cases where I've sort of advised maybe I'm not the right fit, or that kind of thing too. Yeah. So coming on to today's episode, it's a bit more of a controversial one, and I think you're the girl for the job. So this episode is about how to avoid frustrating / pissing off your wedding photographer / videographer. Right. It's not necessarily all from a couple side. It might be guests as well. But I'm sure every photographer, videographer can feel the pain on a lot of these. It's things that can happen during our day that are very avoidable and often are unintentional. people don't really realise.
Yeah.
So I just thought this episode would dedicate to
Yeah.
a few of the common things that we find frustrating and are potentially easily avoidable. And for people listening that are planning their wedding, you can take it on board, maybe advise certain guests how to behave, or even just to make our life a little bit easier on the day.
Absolutely, because it'll impact their photos
Exactly.
and film. So yeah.
If we're furious, we won't be doing a great job. No, that's a joke. So the first one, I mean, I know you said before this, there's certain areas of this where you're not sure yourself whether how you feel about it. So obviously, if there's certain bits that you want to pass back to me, then
Sure.
obviously feel free. It makes sense to start before the wedding.
Yes.
So at the inquiry stage.
Yep.
The main thing that is kind of brought up a lot online, I've seen it quite a few times. I tend not to moan online because I'm a bit more down the line, keep it professional.
Same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But inquiry ghosting, are you kind of familiar with that term?
So I, like yourself, I've seen so much about it, and I know that this year people are experiencing a lot more ghosting. And you know, I was thinking about this the other day because I think we as a profession actually need to define what do you mean actually by ghosting.
Yeah.
Because when someone gets in touch to just grab a price or find out availability and you don't hear from them again, some people class that as ghosting. I class that as shopping.
Yeah,
I don't
wouldn't
think
either.
that's ghosting.
No.
But if you've gone through that process, booked in a call, someone's then said, do you know what, we're really interested, send us whatever you need us to do for the next step, and then you don't hear from them again, that's ghosting. And I wonder if right now that's been blurred as to what actually ghosting is.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, definitely. I'd say if you've had a consultation call, which most suppliers will offer you, whether it's in person or over Zoom, I think if you've had that half an hour to an hour of that person's time, then it's polite to say either way.
Yes, absolutely.
I think if you've just downloaded a PDF brochure or maybe exchanged one email, naturally, I do it all the time.
Exactly.
I'm guilty myself.
Absolutely. That's part of the shopping process. That is part of people's buying behaviour. And like you said, we all do it. So I can't sit back and moan at somebody else for doing exactly what I would do. I know I used to have my prices on my website. As of probably about 2-3 weeks ago, I've taken them off, and I have like a range, because I noticed there was a lot more getting in touch and not hearing from them again prior. I think even prior to like 2021 or 2022, even when people did ask about prices or you sent one email, you still had that, they'd still follow through quite successfully. Like you could bank on it. But now I see a lot more just looking. So I went with this. I thought, if they're just looking, actually, I'm going to take my prices off and I'm going to offer more information if they're really interested. So there is almost another part to the buying process for them. So I just went with it, and I don't get offended if I don't hear from them again. And I do specify that the chat that I have is a no obligation chat. So I can't then be, upset or annoyed with them if they choose not to go with me. I think it's part of the process. We don't have a shop. This is just something that we've got to.
Yeah,
take
I mean,
on
the
the chin.
consultation is to get to know them and see
Yeah.
if you feel a vibe between them, if you feel compatible.
Yep.
So yeah, a consultation is always, well, not, I'm sure there's people that's not, but to me as well, it is no obligation.
Yeah.
But it would be nice to sort of get an email after to say, which, to be honest, I haven't experienced it a lot.
Right.
And I'm not saying I have either, but this is more inspired from the posts that we see a lot.
Absolutely.
But I'd say there's a lot of whingy
I would
business owners
agree.
out there.
I would agree. And I think there has been a change in how people buy. People do shop more. There's a lot more on the market. There's so much more visible on the market. And I think some of our whingers, they've not changed their tactics. They've not changed, I suppose, or they've not introduced that sort of sales aspect. And you do have to do that. There is a sales part to your job. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Okay, so that's ghosting covered. So coming on to, they've booked. We're at the wedding.
Yep.
This is where we're at now. So I know this is quite broad, so don't go too in depth into it, but just
Sure.
maybe cover off some stuff that comes to the top of your mind. What are the sort of the common frustrations that wedding photographers encounter whilst working with the couple or guest on the day? And then maybe we'll go a bit more in depth.
Do you know, I don't find, from my experience, I don't find any problems with the couple. And I don't tend to get frustrated with a couple.
No.
Purely because it's their first time. They don't know, they've not done this before. For the majority, they've never done this before. And this is our everyday job. This is our world. We should sort of hold I'll hold their hand rather throughout the process. My frustrations, I suppose, that I experience more often, and my anxiety is related to the guests.
And this
Hence-
episode was inspired by
Yes.
a post you posted a few weeks back.
Yeah.
To be honest, I saw it and thought, that's very true. I mean,
Do you know, I sat on posting that for a good year, 2 years. I've had that written in my notes about how do I directly speak to wedding guests, because I don't think it's about the couple when it comes to the wedding. The wedding is the guests. They are the one that create the wedding. And over time, I think there was definitely a period after COVID where it was pretty bad. You could see people's, I suppose, socialization skills was pretty non-existent. It was pretty awful. And then this aspect of, oh God, we've been let out and just party mad. I'm hoping that it's starting to even out now. But I think some of the guests need educating. I think so many people, and what I was inspired by, so many people are worried about what to wear. But I think people need to be more worried about how to act on the day. And I think that's where that post basically came from. Yeah.
okay. So one of the most common things I'd say I see from photographers and videographers is the typical, you're in the ceremony and there's mobile phones. In fact, I've done some weddings where, the older they get, the bigger the device. Yeah. So you get the iPad out. And we're trying to get nice shots that last a lifetime. And there's a massive, 14-inch iPad or even just a phone stuck out in the middle of the aisle.
Yeah.
What's your thoughts on phones during the ceremony?
So, controversially,
You like it?
I don't mind it.
Okay.
Because I just think that's who we are today as humans. Our phone is in our hand 24/7. It's quite natural to do that. So that doesn't annoy me. And I take it as this was part of the day. This is the story. What I cannot understand is why they need to do it. Why you would want hundreds of photos on your phone as a wedding guest of the wedding day that you won't look at it again. And I think that's something guests need to sort of, do I need to do this? Do I need to do this all day?
But you could apply that to most parts of their life. You're going out for a meal. Are you going to look at that picture of your pastor even tomorrow, let alone in a year's time?
Right.
But yeah, I would agree. I don't hate it. Like, whatever happens on your day happens on your day, and we're documentary shooters, so that's what we capture. But there is moments where, less so mobiles, but I've definitely had weddings where iPads have come out.
Right,
I guess
okay.
I can accept phones, but iPads maybe not.
That is a bit, yeah.
They do block the shots. And I'd say I've had instances where someone is actually almost barging me out the way to get their iPad shot.
Right, okay.
That's where it gets a little bit difficult.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
However, I think it does say in my contract something along the lines of, if I am getting barged out the way by an iPad, then what can I do about it? Like, that's part of the day.
Yeah. It's not your fault at all. Yeah.
I do know other photographers that are absolutely against photos, and they post pictures with all the phones in the aisle, and it's all a negative thing. So it is personal taste. It's very common that you have a no phone ceremony.
Yeah.
I forget what the technical
Unplugged.
Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah,
Unplugged. I personally had an unplugged ceremony. I guess have a feeling either way. I guess I'd probably sway to unplugged.
Yeah,
but
absolutely. I'd always go that it's much better to do that. It's much better to have an unplugged ceremony completely. Just enjoy it.
It's just that the ceremony, I couldn't really care less if the rest of the day, if you want your phone out, then help yourself. But during that ceremony where it only happens once, you've only got one opportunity to capture it. If you're getting blocked by a killer iPad, it's not ideal. And I say, because I shoot not necessarily always civil ceremonies. I shoot a lot of Asian weddings and
Right.
African weddings,
Yep.
where there's a lot
A lot
of
of
people.
people.
That's where it's a lot worse, I guess.
Yes.
So
Yeah,
if
I
if
can
they're
totally
all
see that. Yeah.
on an aisle, is less of a problem, I
Yeah.
guess. But if you're kind of crowded round one area, you're kind of fighting for your life almost.
I think that would frustrate. Definitely, I think I would feel frustrated at
Yeah.
that point. Yeah.
So with that in mind, is there any kind of guidelines that you'd recommend couples to communicate to their guests,
I think,
like pre-wedding?
yeah,
ideally?
I think you can. Lots more people have wedding websites these days, don't they? And I think get it on the invite. I think you can have a sign, but signs are ignored. I think signs are pointless. I think having a word with whoever's conducting your ceremony to give a quick speech about we're not having any phones, that's what's going to help, because people just don't read and remember and all the rest of it. So you might as well tell them a couple of minutes before, put your phones away. I did see actually, funnily enough, recently an American wedding where the couple were getting married. And I don't know whether it was the photographer or the videographer who was handed the mic and said to the guests, get your phones out, take all the pictures, get it out of your system, do it now. Literally gave them like 2 minutes and then said, right, now put it away.
I think I've seen that actually.
Yeah.
That's not a bad idea.
It's not bad. It's something I used to do when I used to teach the kids science. So we'd always have equipment and it'd always be in the middle of the table. And before I'd start the lesson, I'd be like, knock yourselves out, touch everything you need to touch, because it saved them fiddling whilst I was delivering the lesson.
Yeah.
People, it's human nature. We need to do it. So might as well get it out.
So yeah, there's a couple of ideas of ways it could be implemented. Either let it play out however they want and don't tell people what to do, or it's at the end of the day, it's your day. If you want to craft it in a certain way, people are invited there only. Tell them, like, if you don't want phones, no one's going to take offense. I don't think I've had any cases where I've heard people say, oh, why can't I take photos? I think they understand.
I think so as well. I've also seen another company on TikTok again, where there's a company who take in people's phones. So you drop your phone off, they zip it up in a little Ziploc bag with your ID on it. I think that's a bit overkill.
Yeah, step too far for me, but it's probably America.
Yeah, it probably is.
Typically a little bit, you could say ahead, but like they're testing stuff before us, maybe.
Absolutely, yeah. They just go for it, yeah.
So that's phones during ceremony time. I think we covered that off pretty well. There's definitely some tips people can take from that. Let's go now on to speeches in general. Not phones at speeches, but just timings for speeches. Again, another thing I see from, you could call the whingy people online in the industry. Inconvenient times for speeches. When the speeches should be arranged during meal times. What's your opinion on that? Because obviously, naturally, just before you go, I think from what I've seen or witnessed, there's kind of 3 options. It's either before meal, during each course, or after meal.
That's right.
So what's your sort of...
My preference, and I have done like a reel or a TikTok on this, is speeches at the start. But it does depend on when your ceremony is and, the timeline of your day and the time of year. For me, as a photographer and as someone who, in the UK, we don't get a lot of sun, when there is that golden hour, you want to be free of events happening at your wedding so you can take the couple away. And it tends to be, that golden hour always tends to fall around that meal time. So I always advise, go for speeches at the start of the meal so that you have the opportunity to go for that golden hour photo. However, if you're having a summer wedding, you've got a lot longer, haven't you? You've got until 8:30, 9 o'clock for your golden hour. So it won't really impact it. So it does depend on the timings of your day and the time of year. But I'm also a big fan of speeches at the start, because I have seen so often when they're at the end or in between courses, people so nervous about doing their speech, and just not enjoying their meal, not enjoying their drink, literally just sitting there rehearsing their speech. And I think that's really sad. And I think if you have the speeches at the start, especially for the nervous speakers, get it over and done with. They can then enjoy the rest of the day, because, you're asking people who are probably not natural public speakers to do this thing at a large event, standing up in front of lots of people that they don't actually know, it's a big ask. And I think to put them through the torment of having to wait another hour and a half throughout the meal, I think that's, pretty risky and not very nice. And I also see by the end of the meal, people start, you have that lull, don't you? People start falling asleep.
You've had a 3-course meal, you're probably a bit...
Right, absolutely. You need people to get up at that point, because I find that if they don't, they stay in their chairs. They just sit there for a lot longer till something happens on the dance floor.
I think that's a very few valid points there. In fairness, I actually used to look at it the opposite.
Right.
There was another photographer that posted 2D photography, Dan and Sarah, I think it is. So shout out to those guys. They posted a similar post, and at the time I actually commented, from a video point of view, there is a slight difference, and that comes down to we have to come in, we have to put all the mics on people.
Right, yes.
We have to make sure the audio is okay. Usually there's 3 speeches, but more and more there's maybe 4 or 5 speeches. Everyone has to have a mic so we can capture the sound. And that initial stress of making sure everyone is ready. And I mean, like, my nightmare is, which has come very, very, very close to happening, is I'm not ready and people start standing up.
Yes, right.
And there's no reason for it to be such a rushed process. And people aren't mic'd, or I've only just been mic'd. I'm not even behind my camera yet, and people are starting to stand up to talk. That's the only bit that gives me a lot of anxiety.
I can imagine that, yes.
From photography, obviously, that's less of a thing, because firstly, you don't have to capture the first second of the word that's said. And you don't have to deal with mics.
Right.
However, everything else you said is very valid. So if anything, I would say just don't rush straight into it.
Yes.
Like, just give 5-10 minutes for people to settle. It's not a race to get started.
Absolutely. And there's other things you can cut the cake. So I've seen people do that. They cut the cake as a symbol to then go and you know, so that gives people time to settle, see that little bit. You don't have to get up out of your chair. You can literally just cut the cake in front of everyone. Bit of a cheer. And I suppose that gives the videographer some extra time to quickly get, you know, mics in place and all the rest of it. Yeah.
If there's 2 of us.
If there's 2.
But if we've got a film cutting the cake as well, then that's even more stress from my point of view.
We don't care about you. It's just about the photographer.
Well, to be honest, it does come down to it, because that brings me on to speeches in between each course.
Hell.
And it does come down to that. It's not that people don't care about us, but we're there to do the job. So I can see it from both sides. They've paid us usually a decent amount of money to be there. So almost like, you'll do whatever we want, which I can understand that. But by putting speeches in between each meal, you're basically saying you're not allowed a break, basically. That's how I see it.
Yeah.
Because in terms of, we're often given a supplier meal. The timings for that are often
always
all over the place.
Yep.
We're told to wait last.
Yep.
And if we're always like anxious, ready to leap up in case someone starts a speech between each course, because often we are not in the room, that creates a lot of anxiety.
Completely. I think it's the worst idea. And I don't think the caterers like it either, because you cannot control how long things will be. And there'll always be a speech that just runs over, and then that has a knock on the next course. And I think it's not so much the break for me, because I don't think I really take a break, though I should. For me, it's the next bit, right? Where are we going to do some golden hour photos if they're coming up? Right, I need to go and get my flashes out. I need to go and set that up. What's happening with the DJ, the band? Where are they? Where they're going? All of that is taking place for me during the break time. And I deliver sneak peeks, I suppose, or previews the next day. Yeah. And it's usually in that time I'm deciding what is it that I'm going to be delivering tomorrow. So I'm still working. So yeah, I think speeches in between courses are an absolute ball ache. That's what they are.
But I do see the logic of why people end up going down that route, but I just don't, for the potential catastrophe it could cause. It's not worth it. No. So try to avoid speeches between courses.
Absolutely.
So just in terms of full roundness, so speeches after the meal, from my more selfish perspective, it means we've got time for a break. I've also got plenty of time to make sure microphones are placed on people. However, as you said earlier, it depends on the time of year. Like if the sun is dropping rapidly and we've not had ample opportunity to get couple shots, or there's an amazing golden sun in the sky and there's no chance in hell we're going to get it because it lasts for what, 20 to 30 minutes?
If that, yeah.
Yeah. So
because there's trees as well. People always forget there are trees that it goes down behind, you know. So you've got even less time, yeah.
So previously I'd say I don't mind speeches after the first dance, but look at your sort of timeline, look at the time of year. If it's not going to be dark for another 2 hours anyway, then I've got no issue with speeches after.
No problem. Speeches before, after, whatever. But still don't do it in the middle.
Cool. So you probably already answered this question a bit earlier. It's about if there's any unintentional, not problems, but things that happen during the day from the couple's point of view that can make it a bit more, not necessarily frustrating, but a bit more difficult. Is there anything you can think of that maybe from a couple's point of view they should maybe just be aware of? There doesn't have to be.
I don't think so. I think for me, it's more the guests.
Yeah.
If they're mindful of who they're inviting. I don't know if that's...
No, I'd agree. The only thing I'd possibly say, I've never ever been frustrated with a couple on the day.
Never, no. Sometimes
I'll look at the schedule of events and the timings and think that's a bit tight. Like,
yes,
but that's almost an experience thing as well.
Absolutely.
And like you said, you've got to appreciate most people, this is their first time round. They probably haven't got a wedding planner. And you think, well, that timeline's very tight, particularly again, from a video side, a fraction more than photography. If you happen to have an event where you're getting ready in one place, you're then going to a church in a second place, you're then going, I've had times where I've traveled an hour and a half to a third party reception.
Yep.
That's when it gets very stressful for us.
Absolutely.
Again, sorry, possibly for video more, because we tend to have more static tripods.
Right.
And if I'm shooting solo or even with a second shooter, to have to get 3 cameras and 3 tripods out of a church into a car or a van or whatever, usually when there's no parking around, to then have to rush somewhere else. It is just plan extra time into the day.
Absolutely, plan extra time. I mean, and if you can have a wedding all in one place, you'll be so much more grateful for it because you will be able to have that relaxed day. Because like yourself, I've done one where, you know, the second venue is about 45 minutes. I'm like, and you're going down a dual carriage. I'm like, what the?
And everyone's thinking the same.
Yeah,
all
and
the
even
guests are thinking,
like, oh,
why?
God, what's happening here? But it's just, it's a bit of a, I think choosing venues is something that couples should really research why they're doing it. Looking at the rain plan. If it rained at that venue, what would happen? The lighting at that venue, could their pictures look like? Where can they go for photos? You don't want to then book a venue and find out there's restrictions, you know, as to where you can go. So I think venue choices is a big thing that they need to consider.
I mean, we're definitely going to have separate episodes on venues, pros and cons for different types of venues. I reckon I could have a whole entire episode on churches. I won't go into it too much, but I've had some horrific experiences.
Right. I haven't.
Have you not?
No.
There's one standout moment that my second shooter Jack will definitely remember.
Oh, right, okay.
From churches. Not so much the church, but the vicars and their personalities sometimes can be a little more challenging.
I can imagine.
I won't go into that because, as I said, that could be a whole episode. Again, just to clarify, I've never had issues with clients in terms of the couple. And to be honest, as I said, it's their day is their day. If that's how it pans out,
absolutely,
then that's how it pans out. Like we're documentary, so if something hasn't happened, then
exactly
that was the day. Right? It's a true reflection of the day. I think we're both the same. We don't stage stuff.
No.
We don't.
No.
I don't interfere with the timetable or the schedule of events too much.
No.
Very rarely will say anything,
Right.
unless it's sort of in the pre-meeting. I might give a few heads up.
Yes, that's what I'll do in the pre. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So what about guests then? You say, I know you said, well, we've touched on phones and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
What else have guests done in the past that have maybe rubbed you up the wrong way?
I think my frustrations with guests comes down to when they're uncooperative when it comes to having their photo taken. And I know that often they're deflecting. They just don't like the camera. And I think over time I've learned to change tack. I've done the whole natural candid shot, but I've noticed when they wince or when they turn their back. And that's when I've approached them and gone, do you want one where you're looking at me? Do you want one where you're more posed and ready? And they've appreciated that. And that's how I've broken that barrier, because I was tired of, almost as a rudeness, isn't there? They literally turn their back. And most couples think they've got the best friends, that won't happen at weddings, but it does. They don't always see it, but it does happen. And that's the frustrating thing. And getting guests to a certain place, i.e. the group shot or the confetti, they just don't listen to photographers. I don't know if you've experienced as a videographer. They do not listen to you. They don't care.
Well, I think, you're definitely talking more around the, like the family shots time of day.
Yeah.
Usually, often that's straight after the ceremony. They might have 15, 20 minutes of nibbles or whatever, but it's then into group shots where people, again, you've got to remember a lot of people might have been drinking or...
Yes.
So they shouldn't be that drunk at that point of day, but some people still are.
Yeah, so it's the alcohol thing that is my biggest frustration at a wedding, because I don't think people realise that you've got an event with up to hundreds of people where alcohol's on tap, but there's nothing in place to keep that environment safe.
Yeah.
If you're in a pub or in your club, you've got bouncers, you've got staff who are prepared to stop serving or get rid of guests. Yeah. But you don't find that at weddings.
Very true. I mean, I guess I'm not sure, in fairness, what can be done about it though. It's just...
So there was a campaign, I'd say 2021, because it did come up how female photographers were actually not safe, felt quite unsafe at weddings. And I do have friends where things have happened.
I've seen that one.
Yeah. And so there was a campaign where Bride Book got involved as well, where, they wanted couples and suppliers to be aware of things that happen at weddings. And it's not just photographers. I've got friends who are like part of the catering staff. I've got friends who are singers, and they've been not treated very nicely by drunk guests. And I'm also not saying it's a man-woman thing. I'm not saying it's always a female being attacked by a male. I know male DJs who get completely harassed by very drunk women by the end of the night. Yeah. So that issue definitely needs to be addressed. And I don't know how, because it as a couple, you have to then look through your friends list, don't you, and go...
Yeah, well, you can't, because, I mean, you've always got that family member that has to be invited, but they don't behave themselves. Yeah. Or,
I do know some venues that do have security, but not enough. Not enough, yeah.
I mean, it definitely, as a couple listening to this, I wouldn't make it something you need to think about too much, but maybe pass that responsibility on to someone that's...
Definitely.
They're a sensible person. Yeah. Maybe bridal party, groom's party, whatever it happens to be, there's bound to be a couple of people in your group that you can say, like, please keep an eye on these
100%.
These people.
I think that's probably the best way at this point in time to sort of diffuse anything that might happen, is to have a nominated person who will be able to sort of neutralise that situation, definitely.
And again, I suppose with group shots, even if it's just the case of there's typically always at least that one rowdy person that you're just trying to get this shot done as quick as possible so everyone can sort of dissipate and have a good time.
Absolutely.
But that one rowdy person is just prolonging the whole experience. So again, I guess it could just have that one person that usually it naturally happens, in fairness, where they just kind of get told to shut up.
Yes.
Like, let's just get this done.
But it just takes a bit of time, doesn't it? Because I think everyone looks at each other like, shall we do something? I mean, I've had where I've been at weddings where there's been a guy on the dance floor holding a chair above his head, and just people have not known what to do. He's absolutely pissed out of his head, chair on the dance floor, and eventually someone's come over and gone, put the bloody chair down, because it's a hazard. I have had, especially on the dance floor when they are very drunk, like, you know, people who sort of touch you, who and move you or touch your camera, and I have thankfully had a more sober person step in and remove that person physically and go, move away, like leave them alone.
And also children.
Yes.
I've had a couple, no, probably only one wedding that I can think of where you've got probably pre-teen child. Obviously it's not your child, so I always feel when it's children you can't really say anything at all. But I've had one little boy I remember specifically, he just kind of grabbed hold of the tripod,
right,
and he's kind of stood on it, stood almost in front of it, and you can't really say anything. You obviously can't push him off. You're looking around for help, and I've had that before. It's not very common at all, but again, either drunk people or children that are maybe not the best behaved, or I mean, children are children. I mean, they should hopefully have a responsible adult keeping an eye on their behaviour. So I guess that's the only other thing. I don't want it to sound like we're whinging at everything.
Absolutely. And I absolutely agree. I don't want to sound like it's whinging, and we're not saying it happens at every wedding at all. Not. But when it happens, it happens. And it's just something to be sort of, just bear that in mind, really, if you want that lovely smooth day, you know?
Yeah.
So,
But I mean, it's part of our jobs to take it, water off a duck's back, if that's the phrase. But yeah, these things do happen. Okay, so I think we covered a lot of topics in terms of on the wedding. Was there any other elements you thought you wanted to bring up before we go on to sort of post-wedding?
No, I think that's about it, really.
Yeah.
I suppose the only other thing, just touching on that post that you saw about the guests at wedding, is just like if you're a wedding guest and you're listening to this, or you're going to be a guest at a wedding, you are the wedding. So get involved, like not checking your phone all the time, but listening to the speeches and looking at the person who's speaking, and just those sorts of things help.
Again, we'll have a whole episode on speeches, start to finish, fairly soon, no doubt. So coming on to, you know, the wedding's finished. Everyone's had an amazing time.
Yep.
We haven't been abused too much. As a joke. Sort of post-wedding, what can couples do to sort of, you know, make us feel like we've done a good job, leaving reviews, that kind of thing? How important is that?
I think reviews are really important. The way I get around it is I send like QR codes in the gift box, whatever I do at the end of it, and I have the short link, and I share that as much as possible online. And because I share that, I think couples have got it into their heads that, oh yeah, that's something that we should do. But most of the time, couples really love their suppliers in the wedding day, and they're really willing to do that without even prompting. I've had reviews within 24 hours. You know, before I've even delivered the sneak peeks, I've had a Google review. I'm like, oh my God, that's amazing.
I've always had that difficulty where I feel I can't ask for a review when they've not seen the full work.
Oh, that's how I feel. I'm like, mate, you've not seen the photos yet.
But they're reviewing you on your personality, how you worked, how you interacted with the guests.
Yeah, absolutely. I think other things is recommendations. I think that's the big thing where couples can show their love for their suppliers. It may not be the reviews, but the recommendations go so far. And what has surprised me is how some friends of people who recently got married feel that they can't hire you because they don't want to be known as copying. Have you ever experienced this?
It's hard to know, but my actual rehire rate in terms of people that were at that wedding, I feel is strangely quite low. And I know it's not because they weren't happy with the service, so that may well be.
It's not that, because I've had people who have come to me and then we've had to ask permission if we can use you because you did XYZ's wedding. I'm like, wow. You know, as suppliers in this industry, we rely on word of mouth. We want you to scream so that we can be hired by your friends and, hey, see you again at the wedding. But there are some people who really, their wedding is their bubble and they want to protect that and not have anyone else copy them. So
I think
it's a balance.
Yeah, from friends, that may well be the case. Internally, like in a family, I think that's less of an issue.
Yes.
You often get, oh, you filmed my
Sister's
sister's wedding.
Yeah, that sort of stuff. Yeah.
So yeah, definitely review your suppliers as quickly as you can.
Yeah.
Places like Google, Facebook, even just an email
Yes.
with some words that we can paste into a post is appreciated.
Yeah.
But a lot of people, if they're not in this kind of marketing space, probably underappreciate how important a Google Maps review can be in terms of getting found by other people that don't know us yet. It sounds like you're far more prepared for getting reviews. I'm the opposite. I'm absolutely atrocious.
Really?
I think it's just, I feel really bad at asking.
Oh, do you?
And I'm also horrific at leaving reviews myself.
Oh, I see. I've reached that age where I'm very happy to leave a review, both positive and negative. I'm a sort of person, if you've done something really good, I want to tell you you've done a really good job. Likewise, if you've not done very well, I am the person who's gone to Asda and customer service and went, I have a complaint.
Yeah.
And they've passed me a book to write it down in,
I think for Asda, not so bad, but maybe think before leaving a negative review on a small business, maybe.
Yeah, totally.
Have a word with them first before you publicly.
Yeah.
Obviously, if it's horrific, then obviously people need to know and you're advising others. I guess the one thing from my side, to not receive any feedback, like you've delivered, again, I've seen posts on this, you've delivered a gallery or a video, they've received it on a USB box. Like all my clients get a personalized USB pen with the name on and in a nice box. And there has been more times than I'd like, to be honest, where I haven't heard anything at all.
Right.
And that really, to be honest, it really does hurt because the most rewarding thing of this job is the feedback you get.
Yes.
So to get absolutely no feedback whatsoever.
Yeah.
And you know that, well, you've either smashed it out of the park or you feel you have, or you know there's definitely no reason they're not happy. I think they've just don't think to let you know.
Yeah. See, again, controversially.
Yeah.
I'm not bothered. So I always see as no news is good news. So if I don't, it's great, absolutely fantastic when they do come forward with a review, but I'm not someone who sits there waiting for one, and I'm not too worried if I don't get one. So for me, no news is good news.
True. Yeah.
And I think I don't know, I suppose I'm present on social media quite a bit, and if they're still following me, if they still sort of engage every now and then, to me I'm like, well
that's what I mean. I can see that they are still watching my stories and everything, so there can't be a problem, but you haven't physically said, oh, we received it, we loved it, the family loved it, and I'm sure most of the time that's just an oversight and probably something I'd do myself. And in fairness, if I think about it, how many of my suppliers at my own wedding did I actually take the time to go back to afterwards?
Exactly.
If I think about it, probably very little.
I think people are busy. They're very busy. Once the wedding's done, they literally go back to work. That whole going on a honeymoon straight after the wedding, that's not really done anymore.
No.
So people go back to work. So I don't really expect too much of the couple.
So again, listening to this as a couple planning your wedding, just maybe have that in the back of your mind when the wedding's done.
It's very nice.
You don't understand how important it might be to that person to get that positive feedback.
Yeah.
Okay, so last question then, coming on to sort of final words of wisdom, words of advice. What are your thoughts? How can people alleviate some of the issues we spoke about?
Do you know, I think a lot of today, I was thinking the couples could really save themselves with these issues, I suppose, that could crop up if they invested in a wedding planner. I think it's underestimated the value of a wedding planner on the day. You're organising a massive event, and I don't think people register how big an event is and the logistics of that. And for some, it's the first time they've ever organised an event. And I think we're used to just seeing wedding planner on a telly, an American film or something, where they take over your whole wedding, have to do everything for you. But that's not the case. You can literally hire someone on the run up to your wedding to just coordinate the day. And you cannot, it's not until you experience it, but you cannot underestimate just what a godsend having someone on the day to answer all those dumb questions, to get things moving and tell you where you need to be. Have you ever experienced a couple just literally look at you and go, what do we do now?
Yeah,
And they're
I have met multiple times.
Yeah, you don't know what to do.
In fact, there was actually a wedding I recall where I actually told them what happens next.
Yes.
I'm like, it's time for speeches. Like, you just stand up, tap your glass, people will shut up. So just something as little as that, really.
Absolutely, yeah. But I think they're invaluable, just someone on the day, because you will get, as a couple, you will be asked questions that just take you away from the moment. I think some people also forget, because you're family, that, when there's a problem on the day, as a guest, you should not be going to the couple to tell them about this problem, like there's no toilet rolls in the loo. The couple don't need to know that. But having a wedding plan, having a go-to, even if you can't stretch your wedding planner, having someone as a nominated person to go to is what's going to give you a really smooth day. Like
you say, that comes down to the venue too, because most good venues should have a coordinator that is present the whole way through.
Yeah.
So that, again, you'd go to them with those kind of problems.
Yeah.
Amazing. Well, I think that's been a very insightful episode. We probably will break this into 2 parts.
Okay. Sorry.
No, that's fine. It's better for me. Also, just very quickly to touch upon wedding planners, we have had a previous episode with Bethany Rose, wedding planner.
Okay, cool.
If you want to find out more about the importance of wedding planning, obviously go back and listen to that episode. And yeah, hopefully we might have a part 2 with some more whinging, another few episodes down the line. Thanks very much for joining me on the I Do's and Do Nots podcast.
Thank you.
Thanks.